The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Ambassador Hyunwoo walked into the room with steady steps, but his heart was beating fast. He had been to this place many times before, but today felt different. Today felt dangerous. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds could form near the top. Around the circular room sat the representatives of dozens of alien species, each one looking down at the small human walking across the polished floor. Hyunwoo reached the center of the room and stopped. Above him, on a throne made of living crystal, sat High Chancellor Lithara of the Valerian Empire. Her skin looked like it was made of blue glass, and her eyes glowed with cold light. She was beautiful in the way that a frozen lake was beautiful, perfect but deadly. Ambassador Hyunwoo of Earth, she said, and her voice echoed through the chamber like music made of ice. You stand before this council to answer for the crimes of your species. Hyunwoo looked around the room. To his left sat War Chief Voxtel of the Krathan Empire. The alien was massive, 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. Scars covered his body from countless battles. His red eyes glared at Hyunwoo with pure hatred. On the right side sat the representative of the hive mind, a creature called Kliktar. It looked like a giant insect with 6 arms and wings that buzzed softly. Its compound eyes reflected the light like black diamonds, and its mouth clicked and chattered as it spoke in its strange language. There were others too. The snake-like Sethrak, the floating energy beings called the Lumina, and dozens more. All of them were staring at Hyunwoo with the same expression, disgust mixed with fear. Behind Hyunwoo, his aide So Young stood quietly. She was young, barely 30 years old, but she was one of the smartest people he had ever met. Her fingers moved quickly over a small device, sending messages back to Earth. Every word spoken in this chamber would be recorded and sent home. What crimes? Hyunwoo asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Humanity has followed every treaty and agreement we have made with this council. High Chancellor Lithara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Have you? Let us review the evidence. Holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a star map of human space with dozens of worlds marked in red. In the past 5 years, Lithara continued, your species has established colonies on 47 worlds without permission from this council. These worlds were in disputed territory, claimed by other species. Those worlds were empty, Hyunwoo protested. No one was living on them. We followed the standard colonization protocols. War Chief Voxtal stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over the room. You followed your protocols, human, not ours. You spread across the galaxy like a disease, taking what you want without asking. The hologram changed to show human military bases and shipyards. Hundreds of ships moved in organized formations, their weapons gleaming in the starlight. Your military has grown beyond the limits set by the non-aggression treaty, said Kliktar, its voice sounding like grinding metal. You have built more ships than allowed. You have created new weapons. Hyunwoo felt sweat on his forehead. This was going worse than he had expected. Our military growth is necessary for defense. Pirates and raiders attack our colonies every day. We need ships to protect our people. Protection? Lithara laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Is this protection? The hologram changed again. This time it showed a massive space station hidden in an asteroid field. The station was covered with weapon systems and surrounded by ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hyunwoo's blood turned cold. They knew about the secret base. They knew about Project Aegis. This station violates every treaty your species has signed, Voxtal growled. The weapons you are building there could destroy entire fleets, entire worlds. We can explain, Hyunwoo started to say, but Lithara cut him off. Explain what? How you have been lying to us for years? How you have been preparing for war while pretending to want peace? The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives from dozens of species shouted accusations at Hyunwoo. Some called humans savages. Others said they were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. So Young stepped closer to Hyunwoo and whispered in his ear, Sir, I'm getting reports from our other colonies. Council ships are moving into position around our worlds. This was planned. Hyunwoo felt a cold anger growing in his chest. They had been set up. This whole trial was just for show. The council had already decided what they were going to do. "Silence," Lithara commanded, and the chamber fell quiet. "Humanity, you have proven that you cannot be trusted. Your species is too violent, too aggressive, too hungry for expansion. You threaten the peace that we have worked for thousands of years to maintain." She stood up from her crystal throne, and her voice echoed through the chamber like the voice of a goddess pronouncing judgment. "By the power granted to this council by the Galactic Constitution, I hereby expel humanity from the Galactic Council. All trade agreements are cancelled. All military cooperation treaties are void. All human colonies in council space have 30 standard days to evacuate." The words hit Hyunwoo like physical blows. 30 days. Millions of humans living on dozens of worlds, and they had 30 days to pack up their entire lives and leave. "You cannot do this," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "Those people have lived on those worlds for generations. They have built cities, farms, entire civilizations. Should have thought of that before you started building weapons of mass destruction," Voxtel said with satisfaction. "Maybe next time you will think twice before lying to your betters." The vote was called. One by one, each species cast their vote. The Valerians voted yes. The Krathan voted yes. The Hive Mind voted yes. The Sethrak, the Lumina, all of them voted to exile humanity from the galaxy. When it was over, the count was overwhelming. 47 species voted to exile humanity. Only 3 voted against it, and those were small, weak species that barely had any power in the council. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the representatives of species that had just declared his people to be outcasts. He wanted to rage at them, to tell them they were making a terrible mistake. But he knew it would do no good. "The decision is final," Lithara announced. "Humanity is banished from council space. Any human ship found in our territory after the deadline will be destroyed without warning." As Hyunwoo and So Young left the chamber, they could hear the representatives celebrating behind them. The sound made Hyunwoo sick to his stomach. They walked through the corridors of the council building in silence. Other species they passed looked at them with mixtures of pity and disgust. Some even laughed. The humans were finished, and everyone knew it. When they reached their ship, So Young immediately began sending the full report to Earth. The quantum communication array hummed as terabytes of data flowed across the galaxy in seconds. "What do we do now?" she asked. Hyunwoo stared out the window at the alien city below. Nexus Prime was the jewel of the galaxy, a city where dozens of species lived and worked together in peace. Humans had once been welcome here. Now they were banned forever. "We go home," he said quietly, "and we prepare for what comes next." The trip back to Earth took 3 days through hyperspace. When they arrived, the planet was in chaos. News of the exile had already spread to every human colony. Riots had broken out on some worlds. On others, people were frantically packing their belongings and trying to book passage on evacuation ships. Hyunwoo was taken immediately to Luna Command, the secret military base hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. The base was buried deep, underground, invisible to sensors and protected by the most advanced defenses humanity could build. Admiral Jin-ho was waiting for him in the command center. The old soldier was 70 years old, but he still stood straight and tall. His gray hair was cut short in military style, and his dark eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen too many wars. "How bad is it?" Jin-ho asked. "As bad as it can be," Hyunwoo replied. "They know about Project Aegis. They know about the hidden shipyards. They have been watching us for years." Jin-ho nodded slowly. "I expected as much. The Council has never trusted humanity. They fear us." "Fear us? We are just one species among dozens. Our technology is centuries behind theirs." "No," Jin-ho said, walking over to a massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. "Our technology is different. We think differently. We adapt faster than any other species in the galaxy, and that terrifies them." He pointed to the red dots scattered across the map that marked human colonies. Look at this. In 50 years, we have spread to over 200 worlds. The Valerians took 1,000 years to colonize half that many planets. The Krathen have been spacefaring for 5,000 years and they only control 300 systems. Yon-Ah, Jinho's aide, stepped forward. She was young, about the same age as So Young, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had already seen too much war. "Sir, what are your orders?" she asked. Jinho was quiet for a long moment, staring at the holographic display. Finally, he spoke. "Activate Project Aegis. Send the recall signal to all hidden bases. It is time for humanity to stop pretending to be weak." Yona's eyes widened. "Sir, are you sure?" "Once we activate Aegis..." 5 years had passed since the exile, and the galaxy had changed. The bright hope that humanity once carried among the stars had dimmed to a flickering candle in the darkness. Across human space, colonies struggled to survive without the trade and protection that council membership had provided. On the frontier world of New Busan, Colonial Governor Tai Hyun stood at his office window and watched another evacuation ship lift off into the red sky. The ship's engines left bright trails against the alien sunset as it carried another 1,000 refugees to safety. But safety was becoming harder and harder to find. New Busan had once been a thriving world of 5 million people. Now barely 50,000 remained. The rest had fled to the inner systems where human military forces could still provide some protection. But even the inner systems were not truly safe anymore. "Father," a voice said behind him. Tae-hyun turned to see his daughter, Mireille, entering the office. She was 35 years old now, and the last 5 years had changed her from a bright young diplomat into a hardened military advisor. She wore the gray uniform of the Colonial Defense Force, and her face carried the grim expression of someone who had seen too much death. "What is it?" he asked, though he already knew from her expression that it was bad news. "Long-range sensors are picking up ships," she said, activating a holographic display in the center of the room. 30 vessels moving in attack formation. They will be here in 6 hours. Tae-hyun studied the display. The ships were marked with the symbol of the Thakari Syndicate, a criminal organization that had grown bold since humanity's exile. Led by a vicious alien called Mordesh, they had carved a bloody path through human space over the past 2 years. "What forces do we have?" he asked. 2 patrol boats and a handful of fighters," Mireille replied. "The defense platforms are armed, but they are designed to stop pirates, not a full battle fleet." Tae-hyun closed his eyes. When the exile began, he had been confident that humanity would find a way to survive. Humans were tough, adaptable, resourceful. But 5 years of constant attacks had worn them down. Every month brought news of another colony destroyed, another world abandoned. The Thakari were not the only threat. The Skeltar Brotherhood, the Red Claw Pirates, the Vorthan Raiders, criminals and outcasts from across the galaxy, had descended on human space like vultures on a corpse. Without council protection, human colonies were easy targets. "Send the evacuation order," Tae-hyun said finally. "All remaining civilians to the shelters. All non-essential personnel to the evacuation ships." Mireille nodded and began typing commands into her communicator. Within minutes, alarms were sounding across the capital city. People who had heard these alarms too many times before began the familiar routine of grabbing their emergency bags and heading to the designated safe areas. Tae-hyun watched the organized chaos below his window. These people trusted him to keep them safe, but he was running out of ways to do it. The Colonial Defense Force had lost 3/4 of its ships in the past year alone. The remaining pilots were exhausted, flying missions that seemed more hopeless each day. "Sir," Mireille said, reading from her communicator, "Captain Jong-soo reports that his squadron is ready for launch. He wants permission to engage the Thakari fleet." Tae-hyun almost laughed. Jong-soo was a good pilot. Maybe the best they had left, but his squadron consisted of 8 old fighters against 30 modern warships. It would be suicide. "Tell him to stand down," Tae-hyun ordered. "We will not waste lives on a battle we cannot win." As night fell over New Busan, Tai-hyun found himself thinking about the early days of human expansion. He remembered when the first colonists had arrived on this world 20 years ago. They had been so full of hope, so eager to build something new under an alien sun. Now their descendants were fleeing in whatever ships they could find, carrying nothing but what they could hold in their hands. But while the outer colonies suffered, something else was happening in the hidden depths of human space. In the asteroid fields of the Kepler belt, in concealed bases scattered across dozens of uninhabited systems, humanity was preparing for its return. Chief Engineer Dong Min floated, in zero gravity outside the massive shipyard hidden in the shadow of a gas giant. Around him, construction robots worked day and night on vessels that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about human technology. The ships were enormous, each one stretching for over a kilometer. Their hulls were made from materials that had never been seen before, metals that seemed to absorb light and energy. Weapons systems lined their surfaces like the scales of some ancient dragon, and at their hearts hummed engines that could tear holes in space itself. "Status report," came a voice through his communication implant. Dongmin turned to see Dr. Hye Jin approaching in her own zero-gravity suit. She was the genius behind Project Aegis, the woman who had taken human technology and pushed it beyond the limits of what anyone thought possible. "Hull assembly is complete on units 1 through 20, Dongmin reported. "Weapons installation is at 70%. We should be ready for space trials within the month." Hye Jin nodded, but her expression was troubled. "And the neural interface systems? Working perfectly. Too perfectly, if you ask me." Ye Jin understood his concern. The neural interface technology was what made the Aegis ships truly revolutionary. Instead of relying on individual crews, the ships could be controlled by a single mind, linked through quantum entanglement. One person could command an entire fleet, as if it were a single body. But the technology was dangerous. The human brain was not designed to process that much information. Early test pilots had suffered everything from seizures to complete mental breakdown. It had taken 3 years of careful development to create interfaces that a human mind could handle. "Any word from Admiral Jin Ho?" Dongmin asked. "He is coming to inspect the fleet tomorrow," Hye Jin replied. "I think he is getting ready to make the decision." They both knew what decision she meant. For 5 years, humanity had endured attacks and raids while building its secret fleet. The Aegis ships were nearly ready, but using them would change everything. Once they revealed their new technology, there would be no going back to the old ways. Admiral Jin Ho arrived at the shipyard the next day, and what he saw took his breath away. 50 massive ships floated in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming, with energy that seemed to pulse with life. Around them, hundreds of smaller vessels, cruisers, destroyers, support ships, waited like an honor guard. "My God," he whispered. Yeon-ah, now an admiral herself, stood beside him on the observation deck. "The quantum drives are operational. The neural interface networks are stable. The weapon systems have passed all tests." Jin Ho walked closer to the transparent aluminum window that separated him from the vacuum of space. Each ship in the fleet represented years of human ingenuity and determination. While the galaxy thought humanity was finished, human scientists and engineers had been working in secret to create something unprecedented. "How many ships do we have operational?" he asked. 50 dreadnoughts, Yeon-ah replied. 200 cruisers, 500 destroyers, and more under construction every day." "And the crews?" "Volunteers from across human space. Many of them are refugees from the outer colonies. They have personal reasons to want revenge." Jin Ho nodded. The neural interface technology meant that each ship needed only a small crew. Most of the work was done by advanced artificial intelligence systems linked to the human commander's mind. It was efficient, but it also meant that every captain had to be specially trained and psychologically tested. "Sir," came a voice from behind them. Jin Ho turned to see Captain Seon Ho, one of the first pilots to successfully interface with an Aegis ship. The young man's eyes held a strange intensity that all the neural interface pilots developed. They saw the world differently, now processed information faster than normal humans. What is it, Captain? Jin-Ho asked. We are receiving distress signals from New Busan. The Thakari Syndicate is attacking the colony. Governor Taehyun is requesting immediate assistance. Jin-Ho closed his eyes. New Busan was one of the last major colonies still holding out in the Outer Rim. If it fell, it would send a message to every criminal organization in the galaxy that humanity was truly defenseless. Sir, Yona said quietly, we could deploy a small task force, test the ships under combat conditions. No, Jin-Ho said firmly. We are not ready yet. If we reveal ourselves too early, we lose the advantage of surprise. Seon-Ho's expression did not change, but Jin-Ho could see the disappointment in his eyes. All of the Aegis pilots were eager to test their ships in real combat. They had been training for years, and they wanted to prove that their sacrifices had been worth it. However, Jin-Ho continued, it is time to begin the final phase of our preparations. Send recall signals to all hidden bases. Begin moving our forces into position. When we make our move, I want the entire galaxy to see us coming. As the orders went out across the quantum communication network, hidden bases throughout human space began to stir. Ships that had been concealed for years powered up their engines. Weapons that had never been fired prepared for their first taste of battle. On New Busan, Taehyun stood in his command center and watched the Thakari fleet approach. The evacuation was proceeding as planned, but there would not be enough time to save everyone. The first sign that everything had changed came at Rigel Station, a remote trading post on the edge of human space. Mordesh of the Thakari Syndicate was conducting what had become routine business, raiding another defenseless human settlement. His fleet of 30 ships had surrounded the small space station like wolves around wounded prey. The station's administrator, an elderly human named Gitai, stood in the command center watching the alien ships move into attack position. He had been through this same nightmare dozens of times before. The pattern was always the same: surrender or die. Sir, his aide Wanbin said quietly, they are demanding we open our docking bays and prepare to transfer all valuable cargo. Gitai nodded wearily. Rigel Station was a way stop for refugee ships fleeing the outer colonies. It had no military value, no strategic importance. It was just another target for criminals who knew that humanity could no longer protect its own. Open the channels, Gitai ordered. Tell them we surrender. But before Wanbin could send the message, every sensor on the station began screaming warnings. Space itself seemed to be tearing open just beyond the Thakari fleet. Reality twisted and bent as enormous tears appeared in the fabric of space-time, glowing with energy that hurt to look at directly. Through those quantum rifts emerged ships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were massive, each one over a kilometer long, and their hulls seemed to absorb light like black holes. Energy patterns flowed across their surfaces like living things, pulsing with rhythms that matched no known technology. They moved with impossible grace for objects so large, sliding through space as smoothly as fish through water. What are those? Wanbin whispered. Gitai could only stare in amazement. The ships bore human markings, but they were nothing like the vessels he remembered from before the exile. These were something new, something that spoke of years of secret development and technological breakthroughs beyond imagination. On the bridge of the lead ship, the dreadnought New Seoul, Captain Seon-Ho felt the quantum interface connecting his mind to every system in the vessel. The sensation was incredible, like becoming one with a god of war. Through the neural link, he could feel not just his own ship, but the entire fleet around him. 50 dreadnoughts had emerged from quantum space, followed by 200 cruisers and 500 destroyers. The Thakari fleet, which had seemed so powerful moments before, now looked like toys scattered before titans. Target acquisition complete, reported his tactical officer Ju-Wan. But the words were unnecessary. Through the neural interface, Seon-Ho could see every enemy ship as clearly as if he were standing next to them. The Thakari were not prepared for this. Their ships had been designed to terrorize helpless colonies, not fight a real battle. As the human fleet spread out around them in perfect formation, Mordesh realized he was facing something far beyond his understanding. What are those ships? He demanded of his sensor operator, a nervous Kavari named Sektar. Unknown design, my lord, Sektar replied, his 6 arms working frantically at his controls. The energy readings are off the scale. I have never seen anything like them. Are they human? Mordesh asked, though he already knew the answer. The ships bore human symbols, and there was something about their formation that spoke of human tactical thinking. Impossible, he growled. Humans are weak. Humans are broken. These must be some other species helping them. But deep in his predator's heart, Mordesh knew the truth. Somehow, impossibly, humanity had created these magnificent weapons of war. The prey had become predators. This is Captain Sion Ho of the human starship New Sol, came a voice over the communication channels. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly confident. You are in violation of human space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Mordesh felt rage burning in his chest. No human had spoken to him like that for 5 years. The very idea that these former victims would dare to threaten him was insulting beyond belief. I am Mordesh of the Thakari Syndicate, he broadcast back. I have terrorized human space for years. Your kind trembles before me. You will surrender, or I will tear your precious ships apart. The response came not in words, but in action. Through the neural interface, Seon Ho selected targets and transmitted his intentions to the fleet. 20 dreadnoughts focused their weapons on Mordesh's flagship, a massive vessel that had been the terror of human space for 2 years. The weapons that fired were not like anything the galaxy had seen before. Quantum torpedoes tore through space-time itself, arriving at their targets before they had even been fired. Energy beams that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight punched through shields that had never failed before. Mordesh's flagship, the Terror's Edge, had armor thick enough to withstand nuclear weapons. It had shields that could deflect the firepower of entire fleets. But the human weapons went through its defenses like they were made of paper. The Terror's Edge exploded in a ball of blue fire that lit up the entire system. Secondary explosions tore through the ship as its ammunition stores detonated. Within 30 seconds, the most feared raider ship in human space was nothing but expanding debris. The rest of the Thakari fleet tried to flee, but the human ships were faster, much faster. The quantum drives that powered them could bend space in ways that made traditional faster-than-light travel look like walking. Captain Namjoon of the cruiser Gwangju led a squadron of destroyers in a pursuit that became a massacre. His ship's quantum torpedoes reached out across impossible distances to destroy fleeing raiders. One by one, the Thakari ships died, their crews never understanding what had killed them. The entire battle lasted exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. When it was over, 29 Thakari ships had been destroyed. The only survivor was a small courier vessel that Seon Ho had deliberately allowed to escape. The message it would carry was worth more than another dead pirate. Mordesh himself was found floating in an escape pod, his 6 arms tangled around an emergency beacon. When human marines brought him aboard the New Sol, he could not stop staring at the corridors around him. The ship's interior was as advanced as its exterior. Walls that seemed to be made of liquid light, systems that responded to thought rather than touch. Impossible, he kept muttering. This is impossible. Humans are weak, humans are finished. Seon Ho studied the alien through the neural interface's enhanced perception. He could see the fear radiating from Mordesh like heat from a fire. The predator had become prey, and he could not understand how it had happened. Your people have preyed on humanity for 5 years, Seon Ho said calmly. You have destroyed our colonies, killed our people, stolen our possessions. Did you think there would never be consequences? The Galactic Council exiled you, Mordesh protested. You are outcasts. You have no power. We have the power we make for ourselves, Seon Ho replied, and we have made a great deal of it. News of the Battle of Rigel Station spread across the galaxy with the speed of quantum communication. Within hours, every species in Council space had heard the impossible story. Humanity had returned, and they had brought weapons that could destroy entire fleets in minutes. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Lithera received the reports in her Crystal Palace. The elegant Valerian leader read through the tactical analysis 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. "This cannot be accurate," she said to her military advisor, General Kesselan. Kesselan was a 4-eyed creature whose species had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. He had seen every kind of weapon technology the galaxy could produce, but the data from Rigel Station showed things that should not exist. "I wish it were not, my lady," he replied, "but we have confirmations from 6 different sources. The human ships used quantum weapons on a scale we thought impossible. Their propulsion systems bend space in ways our scientists say cannot be done." Lithera walked to the window of her palace and stared out at the lights of Nexus Prime. The city below represented the greatest achievement of galactic civilization. Dozens of species living and working together in peace. It was everything the Galactic Council had built over thousands of years. "How could they have developed such technology?" she asked. 5 years ago, they were centuries behind us." "Perhaps they were not as far behind as we thought," Kesselan suggested. "Or perhaps exile forced them to innovate faster than they ever had before." Lithara felt a cold fear growing in her chest. The Galactic Council had exiled humanity because they were too aggressive, too unpredictable. But what happened when you took a naturally aggressive species and gave them 5 years to nurse their grievances while developing new weapons? "Send messages to all Council fleets," she ordered. "I want increased patrols along the borders of human space, and send a diplomatic message to Earth. Tell them we want to open negotiations." But even as she gave the orders, Lithara suspected it might already be too late for diplomacy. On New Busan, Governor Tai Hyun was watching the evacuation of the last civilian transports when the news arrived. Mireille burst into his office with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Father, you have to see this," she said, activating the holographic display. The footage from Rigel Station played out before them. Tai Hyun watched in amazement as ships bearing human insignia destroyed the Thakari fleet that had terrorized human space for years. The vessels were Lai. Admiral Jin-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching as the largest fleet in human history moved through quantum space toward Council territory. Through the neural interface that connected him to every ship in the Armada, he could feel the righteous anger of 2,000 vessels and their crews. The fleet was a sight that would have been impossible just months before. Dreadnoughts the size of cities moved in perfect formation alongside cruisers that gleamed like living metal. Destroyers darted between the larger ships like deadly fish, their quantum drives leaving trails of bent space-time in their wake. "Sir," Admiral Yeona reported from her position at the tactical station, "all ships report ready for combat. The Council fleet at Centauri Gate has taken defensive positions." Jin-ho nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the approaching battle. War Chief Voxtal of the Krathan Empire had assembled 10,000 ships to block humanity's return to Council space. It was the largest fleet the galaxy had seen in centuries, representing the combined military might of dozens of species. 10,000 ships, Jin-ho mused. Voxtal must think he is facing the same humanity that was exiled 5 years ago. Through the neural interface, he could feel the confidence of his fleet commanders. Captain Sion-ho on the New Sol was eager to test his dreadnought against the mighty Krathan warships. Commander Yoonji on the destroyer Busan's Fury was coordinating with her squadron for precision strikes. Captain Namjoon on the cruiser Gwangju was already calculating attack vectors that would maximize damage to enemy formations. The human fleet had grown far beyond what even Jin-ho had originally planned. Word of the victories at Rigel Station and New Busan had spread throughout human space, inspiring thousands of volunteers to join the cause. Every hidden shipyard was working at maximum capacity, producing vessels that incorporated 5 years of technological breakthroughs. "Open a channel to the Council fleet," Jin-ho ordered. The main screen shimmered to life, showing the bridge of Voxtal's flagship. The massive Krathan commander stood surrounded by his officers, his forearms crossed over his scarred chest. Behind him, tactical displays showed the positions of his vast fleet. "Admiral Jin-ho," Voxtal rumbled, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "I remember you from the old days when humans still knew their place. You were wise then. Be wise now. Turn your ships around and return to the exile we granted you. Jinho smiled coldly. The exile you granted us? I think you misunderstand the situation, Voxtel. We are not here to ask for permission to return. We are here to take our rightful place in the galaxy. With 2,000 ships against my 10,000? Voxtel laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Even humans cannot be that foolish. Your vessels may be new, but they are untested. My fleet has fought in 100 wars across a dozen sectors. Your fleet, Jinho replied, is about to learn the difference between fighting scattered pirates and facing a united humanity. The connection ended, and Jinho turned to his fleet commanders. Through the neural interface, he could communicate with all of them simultaneously, sharing tactical plans at the speed of thought. All ships, he broadcast across the quantum network. This is the moment we have prepared for. The Council exiled us because they feared our potential. Today, we show them they were right to be afraid. The Battle of Centauri Gate began when the two fleets were still light minutes apart. Voxtel's forces opened fire first, launching volleys of plasma torpedoes and energy beams that had torn apart rebel fleets for centuries. The weapons raced across space in brilliant streams of destruction, but the human ships were no longer where the targeting computers expected them to be. The quantum drives that powered the human fleet could bend space in ways that made traditional tactics obsolete. As the Council weapons reached their target coordinates, they found empty space. The human ships had shifted their positions by manipulating the fabric of reality itself. Impossible, Voxtel growled as his sensor operators struggled to track targets that seemed to exist in multiple locations at once. No species has mastered quantum manipulation on this scale. His tactical officer, a nervous Krathan named Graktar, studied the readings with growing alarm. Sir, their ships are using quantum entanglement to coordinate their movements. The entire fleet is operating as a single entity. Before Voxtel could respond, the human fleet struck back. The weapons that humanity had developed during their exile were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Quantum torpedoes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy beams that could pierce through folded space-time, gravity weapons that turned the fundamental forces of physics into tools of war. Captain Sion Ho led the first wave of dreadnoughts into the heart of the Council formation. Through his neural interface, he could see the battle unfolding like a three-dimensional chess game, played at the speed of light. His ship's weapons reached out across impossible distances to destroy targets that his enemies could not even see, the B. New Sol's primary weapon was a quantum lance that fired compressed space-time itself. When it struck a Krathan battleship, the vessel simply ceased to exist, its matter scattered across multiple dimensions. Target the command ships, Sion Ho ordered through the quantum network. Instantly, 20 dreadnoughts focused their fire on the largest Council vessels. The combined firepower was devastating. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare were destroyed in seconds. Commander Yunji coordinated the destroyer squadrons in a dance of death through the enemy formation. Her ship, Busan's Fury, was small compared to the massive battleships around it, but its quantum drives made it nearly impossible to target. She led her squadron through the Council fleet like sharks through a school of fish, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could find them. Hull breach on the Krathan heavy cruiser, she reported as her torpedoes found their mark. Target destroyed, moving to next objective. The Council fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, found itself fighting an enemy it could not understand. Traditional naval tactics were useless against ships that could appear and disappear at will, that could coordinate their attacks with perfect precision, that seemed to know exactly where their enemies would be before they got there. Captain Namjoon's cruiser Gwangju demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of human quantum technology when it engaged 3 Council battleships simultaneously. Using quantum entanglement to split its fire across multiple targets, the ship destroyed all 3 enemies in a single coordinated strike. This is impossible. Voxtel raged as he watched his fleet disintegrate around him. Ships that had terrorized rebel worlds for decades were being destroyed faster than his sensors could track. No single fleet can defeat 10,000 ships, But the human fleet was not fighting like a single fleet. Through the neural interface network, every ship was connected to every other ship. They shared targeting data, tactical analysis, and strategic planning at the speed of thought. What the Council faced was not 2,000 individual vessels, but a single massive organism dedicated to their destruction. "Sir," Graktar reported with growing panic, "we have lost over 6,000 ships. The humans are targeting our command and control vessels. They are trying to break our coordination." Voxtal looked at the tactical display and felt fear for the first time in his military career. The red dots representing his ships were disappearing faster than he could count them. The blue dots representing human ships moved through his formation, like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing before retaliation could find them. "All ships," he broadcast to his remaining forces, "retreat to defensive positions. We need to regroup and—" His order was cut off as the Indomitable emerged. From quantum space directly in front of his flagship, the massive human dreadnought was 3 times the size of any Council ship, its hull crackling with energy that seemed to bend light around it. "This is Admiral Jin Ho," came a voice over the communication channels. "War Chief Voxtal, you have one chance to surrender. Order your remaining ships to stand down or we will destroy them all." Voxtal stared at the impossibly advanced warship facing him. Through its transparent hull sections, he could see human crew members working at control stations that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. The technology gap was so vast that it might as well have been magic. "How?" he asked simply. "You exiled us because you thought we were too dangerous," Jin Ho replied. "You gave us 5 years to become everything you feared we could be. This is the result." Around them, the battle was winding down. Of Voxtal's 10,000 ships, fewer than 2,000 remained. The human fleet had suffered minimal casualties. Their quantum technology made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. "I surrender," Voxtal said finally, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. "I order all Council ships to stand down." The surrender order spread through the remaining Council fleet, and one by one, the alien ships powered down their weapons. Many of their crews could not believe what they had witnessed. The humans they remembered as barely civilized primitives had just destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history. As Council ships were taken into custody, Admiral Jin Ho prepared his next move. The victory at Centauri Gate was just the beginning. The path to Nexus Prime and the year. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime had seen many historic moments over the centuries, but none quite like this. Ambassador Hyunwoo walked through the same massive doors where he had been humiliated 5 years earlier, but everything was different now. The alien representatives who had once looked down on him with contempt now watched him with barely concealed fear. Behind Hyunwoo walked Admiral Jin Ho, his dress uniform bearing the medals of a dozen campaigns. At his side was Dr. Hae Jin, the genius whose technological innovations had made humanity's return possible. They were flanked by an honor guard of human marines, whose advanced armor gleamed like liquid starlight. High Chancellor Lithara still sat on her crystal throne, but her perfect composure was cracking. Her crystalline features, once so coldly beautiful, now showed the strain of someone who had watched her carefully ordered world crumble in a matter of days. The chamber itself bore scars from recent events. Several seats were empty. Their former occupants had fled Nexus Prime when the human fleet appeared in orbit. Others showed signs of hasty repairs where panicked representatives had damaged the ancient furniture in their rush to escape. "Ambassador Hyunwoo," Lithara said, her voice no longer carrying the imperial confidence it once had. "You returned to us under very different circumstances." Hyunwoo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Indeed, High Chancellor. 5 years ago you exiled humanity from this chamber. Today, we return not as supplicants, but as the dominant military power in the galaxy." Around the chamber, the remaining representatives shifted nervously. The Krathan delegation was notably smaller. War Chief Voxtal was still in human custody, along with most of his senior officers. The Hivemind representative Clicktar clicked its mandibles anxiously, its compound, eyes reflecting the light like fractured mirrors. "What do you want?" Lithara asked, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Admiral Jin-Ho stepped forward, his presence filling the chamber like a storm front. Justice, reparations, and a new understanding of humanity's place in this galaxy. Dr. Hyejin activated a holographic display that showed the devastation of the past 5 years. Images of destroyed human colonies, refugee ships, and mass graves filled the air above the council floor. During humanity's exile, she said, her voice clinical but deadly, over 2 million human civilians were killed by raiders and criminals who knew we had no protection. 57 colonies were completely destroyed. Hundreds of billions of credits and infrastructure were lost. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. Several representatives looked away, unable to meet the eyes of the humans they had condemned to suffer. The Council's decision to exile humanity, Admiral Jin-Ho continued, created a power vacuum that was filled by every criminal organization in the galaxy. You did not just exile us, you painted targets on the backs of every human civilian in space. The Sethrak representative, a snake-like creature named Sisahara, raised her head. The Council could not have predicted the actions of criminals and outlaws. Could you not? Hyunwoo asked coldly. When you remove all protection from a species and declare them outcasts, what did you think would happen? Lithera tried to maintain her authority. The Council acted according to galactic law. Humanity was deemed a threat to galactic peace, due to your aggressive expansion and military buildup. A threat? Admiral Jin-Ho laughed, but the sound held no humor. You feared our potential, so you tried to destroy us. Instead, you forced us to realize that potential. The quantum technology we developed during our exile has made us the most powerful military force in galactic history. As if to emphasize his point, the chamber's communication systems activated to show a live feed from orbit. Hundreds of human ships surrounded Nexus Prime, their advanced hulls gleaming with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. The sight made several representatives gasp in fear. Your fleet, Lithara said weakly. Surely you cannot maintain such forces indefinitely. The cost alone. Our economy has grown by 400% since the exile. Dr. Hyejin interrupted. Necessity forced us to become completely self-sufficient. We no longer need council trade networks or support structures. In fact, many council species now depend on our technology exports. The Lumina representative, a being of pure energy named Fluxara, pulsed with nervous light. What are your terms? Hyunwoo produced a datapad and began reading from it. First, the Galactic Council will formally apologize for the illegal exile of humanity and acknowledge that it was based on fear rather than justice. Several representatives started to protest, but Admiral Jin-Ho's cold stare silenced them. Second, Hyunwoo continued, the Council will pay reparations totaling 500 trillion credits to compensate human colonies for their losses during the exile. The number caused an uproar. Even the wealthy council coffers would be strained by such a sum. Third, all trade agreements with humanity will be renegotiated to reflect our new status. Humanity will receive most favored nation status, with all council members. And fourth, Admiral Jin-Ho said, his voice cutting through the chaos, humanity will hold 5 permanent seats on the council's ruling body, with veto power over all major decisions. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives shouted that the terms were impossible, that humanity was asking for too much, that the council would never agree to such demands. Lithera raised her hand for silence. These terms are excessive. You ask us to essentially hand control of the galaxy to humanity. We ask you to acknowledge reality. Hyunwoo replied. Humanity is now the strongest military power in the galaxy. We could simply take what we want. By force, instead we offer you the chance to accept the new order peacefully. The hive mind representative Kliktar was the first to see the logic. The collective recognizes human superiority in warfare. We propose acceptance of the terms to avoid further conflict. One by one, other species began to fall in line. The economic powerhouse worlds could not afford to be excluded from human trade networks. The military powers had seen what happened to Voxtal's mighty fleet. Even the proudest species were forced to acknowledge that the galaxy had changed forever. But the most dramatic moment came when War Chief Voxtal himself was brought into the chamber. The once mighty Krathen leader was in quantum restraints, but he carried himself with the dignity of a warrior who had fought honorably and lost. Voxtal of the Krathen Empire, Admiral Jinho said formally, "You led the fleet that tried to prevent humanity's return. By rights, you are our prisoner of war." Voxtal's red eyes met Jinho's without flinching. "I fought for what I believed was right. I accept the consequences of defeat. However," Jinho continued, "you fought with honor. Your surrender saved thousands of lives on both sides. Therefore, I offer you a choice. Accept humanity's place in the new galactic order, and you will be released to return to your people. Continue to oppose us and remain our prisoner." The chamber held its breath as Voxtal considered the offer. Finally, the proud warrior lowered his massive head in a gesture of respect. "I accept," he said simply. "The Krathen Empire recognizes human dominance. We offer our allegiance to the new order." The psychological impact was enormous. If the proudest military commander in Council space could accept human superiority, what excuse did others have to resist? The vote, when it finally came, was overwhelming. 43 species voted to accept humanity's terms. Only 4 voted against, and they were small, isolated worlds with no real power to resist. As the session ended, Hyunwoo found himself thinking about how much had changed. 5 years ago, he had walked out of this chamber in disgrace, representing a species that the galaxy considered too dangerous to tolerate. Now he walked out as the representative of the galaxy's dominant power. But the real work was just beginning. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed rapidly. Human technology spread to allied worlds, bringing advances in medicine, agriculture, and industry that improved billions of lives. The quantum communication networks that had coordinated human fleets now connected distant worlds in real time, making galactic civilization more united than ever before. Captain Seon Ho found himself commanding not just a warship, but an exploration vessel. The new Soul had been refitted for long-range missions beyond the galactic rim, where human crews worked alongside alien scientists to map unknown regions of space. "Sir," his tactical officer Juwon reported, "we are detecting an artificial structure in the next system. It appears to be of unknown origin." Through his neural interface, Seon Ho could feel the excitement of his crew. This was what humanity had always been meant to do. Push the boundaries of known space, explore the unknown, seek out new worlds and new civilizations. "Set course for the structure," he ordered. "Let us see what wonders the universe has to offer." On Earth, in the orbital shipyards that now surrounded the planet like a metal ring, new vessels were being constructed. But these were not weapons of war. They were ships of exploration, vessels designed to carry human and alien crews on missions that would expand the boundaries of galactic civilization. Dr. Hae-jin stood in the observation deck of the primary construction facility, watching as the first of the new Explorer-class ships took shape. The vessel was a marvel of cooperative engineering, incorporating human quantum technology with the best innova